In a world where news is on a 24-hour cycle, so sometimes it's so hard to stay focused on something. I've had this experience as I talk to those who work in disaster areas where, you know, a flood might come through or a fire might come through and everyone's attention's on it for a day or two or maybe three. And hopefully some funds are raised and people are helped, and then all the rest of us just move on. But those people are living with that for months and months and months and months. And those who are trying to serve it, it's hard to have people care. It's a bit similar, I suppose, in a way, for those who serve in our armed forces, in our defence forces, that they go and serve, and it's an intense moment, and it's a remarkable community, and it's sometimes some horrifying things that occur, and yet they've got to live with that for years and years, and the rest of us maybe don't quite understand. That's why an organisation like Soldier On is around to help those who have served in the defence forces, and we're going to hear that ongoing story. We're going to try and think about it in a different way, about the longevity, the things that can be helped for those who have served us, with the CEO of Soldier On, Paul Singer. He is my guest today on the podcast. Would you please like, rate, review? That helps it get out to more and more people. Let's chat with Paul. G'day, Paul.
G'day, Clayton. Really special to join you on this Anzac Day weekend and all your listeners.
It's wonderful to have you in. Explain, let's do the 20-second summary of Soldier On first, then we're going to deep dive into that.
Great. Well, Soldier On is a national charity that looks after veterans and their families, and ultimately our purpose and our singular focus every single day is to provide really practical support to veterans and their families to help them thrive both during and after service.
Yeah. Now, you've been the CEO there for a couple of years, but how long has this been running?
So Soldier On's been running for 14 years now, so we celebrate our 15th anniversary next year.
Wonderful.
And in that time, we believe we've probably directly supported over 30,000 veterans and family members, indirectly many more, of course. And it's a real privilege every day walking alongside veterans and family members. It's quite uplifting and enriching work.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask sort of deliberately ignorant questions for a moment. So you said, this is the support of this. So how is that different to what the RSL is doing or what maybe other government agencies might do?
It's a great question, and one we often get in. And it's important to understand that there is no one entity or agency or government service or organisation that can fulfil the full needs of the spectrum to meet the veteran community's needs and expectations around support and services. So the government, of course, do great work around policy and providing support through the Department of Veterans Affairs and other mechanisms. There are some fantastic organisations that have been doing this for a very long time, like the RSL and Legacy. But Soldier On provides a different sort of service, particularly to our contemporary veterans, those who have served in more recent times, who for any number of reasons might be looking for something a little bit different. But it's important that all of the organisations working in this space try and do so collaboratively and cooperatively to ensure that we're able to enhance our impact. At the end of the day, it should really all be about how it is that we as a community can best support and meet the needs of our veterans and family members.
Yeah. There's history over the time of Australia and indeed other nations as well of those who have come back from, especially seeing in war, armed conflict, that there is so much that is not understood by the community that they come back to, and then that feeds out into a whole lot of different areas as well. And I think in many senses, I think the sort of four pillars that you talked about around that sort of health and well-being, the employment, the learning and the education, the participation and sort of connection pieces, they seem to be the areas that are maybe most misunderstood by the community that they're coming back to. Is that a fair way to look at it as well?
I think it's very difficult for anyone who hasn't had direct experience of service in the nation's uniform to fully understand what the impact of that service is, both on the individual and importantly on the family. So what we're focused on is providing that holistic wraparound support through those four pillars that you've mentioned: our health and wellbeing program, our employment support, our learning and education, and then that fourth pillar, as we know so importantly, around participation and social connection. For many veterans, when they take that uniform off for the last time, it may in fact be their most difficult mission to transition into civilian life. Not only for them, of course, but also for their families. But that's not where the support ends. We see through the support that we provide veterans and their families that many avail themselves of the support later on in life. So, for example, we've got now, we're coming up to the 25th anniversary of Australia's service in the Middle East, and particularly in Afghanistan. There are many veterans that are reaching out to us now that, having served in the Middle East, are now looking for that support because they're at a different stage of life. For example, their children might be leaving home, they're empty nesters, and that triggers something different in that family where they go, well, we've just managed to keep it together for the last 20, 25 years, but now that we're entering this next stage of life, we just need some additional support, or we need access to that particular service. And we're seeing that from all of the support that we're providing, from those that are transitioning out of defence right through to those that are later in their journey.
Yeah. Can we deep dive on each of the pillars a little bit as well? Maybe we start with that health and well-being. So what are the actual things that you're doing, and maybe some of the stories of the impact that it's occurred?
Yeah, it's always very hard, of course, to share stories from a health and well-being space because of the confidentiality associated with individuals. But we've got a team of clinicians and psychologists that work right across the country, delivering a hybrid model of both in-person support but also online support. It's important to note that all of our services are accessible from wherever you are in the country, and some of it can be in person, and of course that's really valuable. But equally, it's important that anyone should feel that they have access to the support that's required. So that health and wellbeing team provide individual counselling, but they also provide group counselling with a really strong focus on parenting programs and assisting veterans and families with the tools to strengthen that family unit. Now, what that family unit looks like for every family is different, of course, and we take a really liberal interpretation of what family means. But those programs are all focused on strengthening that unit and recognising that the family is often that first line of support, and in some cases first line of defence, to ensure that the serving member, the veteran, gets the support they need, but also that the family is able to access the support as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really liked as I explored a bit more around Soldier On before we had our conversation, Paul, is that idea that, immediate family really, because of some of the things that veterans might be dealing with or going through, it's much more unique than other parts of society. That does include down to, even down to a grandchild who might be, having to work with a grandparent on something or whatever. And I love that that's really, even down to those levels and all the ones in between, that there's a real heart for that.
I think it's really important to acknowledge that families carry the unique burden of service as well.
Yeah, it's good. Having
said that, they're also extraordinarily resourceful. They've got an incredible ability to get stuff done. When you think about the spouse that is often left to pack up the kids and help move them to another part of the country, settle them in a new location, find a job, it's incredibly resourceful and adaptive skills that families can offer community as well. So we're also really focused on ensuring that the narrative around every digger is broken is a myth. There are an incredible amount of veterans and family members who are contributing really positively to society and have a lot to offer. The reality is that there are some that just need a little bit more support to thrive, and that's where Soldier On comes in.
Yeah, and I think there has to be that acknowledgement, and I've sort of mentioned it a couple of times already, there are unique circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think so often in life, all of us tend to look through a lens of what we know. And there's been service that our veterans have given on so many levels that we have never seen and won't ever see and won't understand, that we have to support in the best way we can in that sense. Let's talk a bit about another one of those pillars, employment support. And I know before we actually came on air, you were like, this is a really, they're all important, but this is this is one that you're doing more and more of as you've seen the need for that. How have you seen the need, and how best do you at Soldier On help support in this way?
So the need is twofold. One, there's the support that we provide veterans and family members with their employment aspirations and goals, and I'll come back to that shortly. And the second is employers wanting to get access to the talent that veterans and their family members offer as well. Oh. So we know all of the soft skills that are often spoke about in terms of discipline, teamwork, ability to get things done, that we talk about those who have served. But equally, as I touched on before, family members who demonstrate that sort of resourcefulness, adaptability, flexibility to move and upend their life and move to another part of the country and do so very effectively, they are all really attractive skills. And what we have is a lot of employers coming to Soldier On saying, we want to access that talent. So we play a role in helping make the connection between veterans and the family members to prospective employers. But importantly, we help employers understand what a veteran-friendly workplace looks like too. So to understand with Anzac Day, what is it that a veteran is likely to be going through? Some of them may wish to commemorate, some of them may not wish to commemorate. Everyone is on their own journey and has their own way of recognising these important days in the calendar. So for an employer to be veteran-friendly, to understand some of that and to understand some of that unique nature of military service and what that means on a daily basis in a new setting is really important. And from the veteran and family members' perspective, we're focused on providing really practical, deeply practical support. It might be CV writing, it might be letter writing, it might be simply translating from military speak, all of those skills that we spoke about, and how is it that you make them attractive and presentable to a prospective civilian employer. So it's those sort of practical roles that we play in helping veterans and their family members take that step with confidence.
Yeah. We've still got a couple more of the pillars we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes' time, but just before we get there, how closely are you working with the Australian Defence Forces in terms of as people are leaving service? Like, do you have a good relationship with them and there's a good sort of handover in that regards, if that's the right phrase and right word?
Yeah, it's a good question because we have some people reach out to us while they're still serving and looking to plan their transition. And we find that when people are proactive like that, it can be really quite constructive and helpful. Others tend to come to us when they realise that they might need a little bit of additional support because of any number of different reasons. But in terms of our relationship with the Australian Defence Force, I think a really important role that we can play is helping some serving members understand that the grass is not always greener on the outside.
Yeah, right.
For them, they hear that from their chain of command and those that they work with on a daily basis. But to hear it from someone that's outside the system and an independent voice can be a really useful invitation for them to think about their options more broadly, rather than just racing out the door, actually understanding, okay, well, what are the benefits? What are the opportunities if I stay in? And how do I weigh those up to the opportunities if I was to transition out?
Yeah. My guest on Towards Understanding is Paul Singer. He heads up Soldier On, and as we talk about on this program, we want to head towards a better understanding of different parts of our community, different parts of how we are, and certainly that's the case on this Anzac Day weekend. We're going to be back with Paul in just a moment here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielan. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
Paul Singer's in the studio with us as we talk about this sort of real holistic service that is available for those who have served in the Australian Defence Force and for their families across a whole lot of different areas. And the four main pillars that they work through: health and wellbeing and employment support. We've talked about those. And learning and education and sort of participating and connecting together. We want to talk a bit more about those now. And it is a not-for-profit organisation as well. How do you get your funding, actually, before we talk about those pillars?
Yeah, so funding is critically important. So most of our funding comes through fundraising or corporate support. People might be surprised to know that only a very, very small percentage of our funding comes from government. So the types of activities that we have throughout the year to fundraise and some of our appeals, including the Anzac Appeal and Remembrance Appeal, Tax Appeal, are all critically important to ensure that we can continue to deliver those necessary supports and services throughout the year.
Yeah.
We've just completed our March On campaign last month, and what I was really encouraged by is that we had 12,300 people across Australia actively participate in this campaign. That's 70% more than last year.
That's great.
Which is remarkable. And cumulatively, those 12,300 people walked over 800,000 kilometres. Now, to put that in perspective, that is to the moon and back.
Yeah.
Or 20 laps of the Earth. Now, that's phenomenal. And what I love about it is the sense of connection, the sense of community that comes from that, and importantly, the conversations that flow from the simple act of walking alongside someone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love how you move, soldier on, march on. All that. What was raised out of that campaign,
so we're about the 3.1 million. The number's still being finalised, but fundraisers like that are so critical to ensure that our operations can continue throughout the entire year.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Let's talk a bit more about what you do, because that's why we've got you on today. We want to hear about this. So, learning and education. Talk to us about what that means to you and what Soldier On does in that space.
So, in that particular program, we offer the opportunity to work with service providers, trainers, organisations to essentially put more tools in the toolkit. And it's about, again, practical opportunities to upskill or change skill for those that might be transitioning or looking for a career change, to help them take on the necessary skills to again, take that next step with confidence. And there's a really lovely example recently where we were partnering with another organisation to deliver a women's entrepreneurial program. And think like the old Shark Tank type format, where some women, all of whom had a connection with defence, are either veterans themselves or spouses, and they participated in this program, had some wonderful learnings along the way. The shared experience of completing that program together was immeasurable. But I joined them for their final presentation, and I gave them a bit of an overview of Soldier On and why we do what we do, and had a bit of a conversation like we are today. And at the end of it, I said, I invited anyone to share any questions or comments about their work or association with Soldier On over the last 14 years. And one woman stood up, and I wasn't quite prepared for what she was going to say. And she said, I still feel myself having a response to it now. She said, if not for Soldier On, my husband wouldn't be alive.
Mm.
If not for Soldier On, I wouldn't have the confidence to be here presenting my idea for my own business, seeking a new start. And it's those sorts of stories that are transformative and really uplifting.
I love that's the case, that it's because one thing to create a big sort of organisation and sort of, well, this is what we're going to do, but it is actually always about the individual change, isn't it? That's ultimately what it's about.
It is always about the human stories that underpin everything else that we do. And our team are really singularly focused on that practical impact for individuals.
Yeah, it's great. And so this education, this opportunity is an important part of it. And it also leads, and as you mentioned at the very start, such an important moment of actually just connecting and allowing participation. As we've talked about, different people have different experiences as they leave the service. And so some want to be embedded pretty quickly, others don't. Perhaps they need a bit of time. Ultimately, everyone needs to be back in community. It's always better in some way, shape or form. How do you go about sort of helping best with a whole lot of different opportunities in that space?
We know that community and connection is so important. It's a rich vein that flows through society. And the veteran community are no different. And in fact, for many of them, that is what has defined their identity through wearing the uniform, being part of something bigger than themselves, similarly for their families, being part of a defence community. And when they leave defence, that is often the thing they miss most, is that sense of connection, that sense of identity, that sense of purpose. And through our activities, our social connection and participation program, we offer opportunities right around the country for veterans to come together with like-minded people in appropriate settings that enable them to re-establish that sense of connection, that sense of purpose, wherever they may be living, and recognising for many of them that may not be within a defence community. In fact, it's likely that it's not. So how is it that we can help facilitate their connection to their current community? And that's really what our program's all about.
Yeah. People can support the work. I'm assuming, is that the website the best place to go to support what Soldier On is?
Yeah, the website at www.soldieron.org.au.
All right, so people can give, they can donate, they can find out more. I'm keen also to go, all right, that's what's needed to run the services now. Here's the magic wand, Paul. You can wave it around. This is what we'd love to do.
Yeah.
Most people who head up an organisation have the ideas of the things they'd love to do. What is that would ideally you think would be the next best things?
What I would really love to do is be able to have the resources and the capacity to extend our reach into regional remote communities. We know from the last census that over a third of our veteran and families live in regional, remote and underserved communities.
That would be a remarkably high portion.
It is.
Compared to
it's a really significant
any
number.
other industry, I'd say, yeah.
And we know that for many of them, to access the support and services that they require is really problematic.
Yeah.
Particularly with fuel prices and the cost of living and other pressures that people currently are working with. So what I'd love to be able to do is to take our services and our support to them. And that naturally requires additional resourcing and additional capacity.
Yeah. And as you said, there's online things which they're getting some of that, but you can't do the face-to-face in that way. You can't have that, which is, as you said, so important.
Particularly when we're dealing with a community that relies so much on trust.
Yeah.
So much of the relationships that they have are based around the currency of trust. And there's no better way to demonstrate and to enliven that trust than through face-to-face connection.
Yeah. I'm assuming you've looked around the world and other places, right? Like I know there's not Soldier On in New Zealand, and this show is going to New Zealand as well. Have you looked around other parts of the world and seen places that are doing this really well? And then I suppose, what have you learnt from them, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there are some organisations that are doing similar work in other countries, but all tailored for the local need.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that makes Soldier On so flexible, is that we're a national organisation, but we're not burdened by a federated model, or we're not a membership-based model. So we're able to bring a national focus to meet the local need, which gives us great flexibility to address needs. And interestingly, there are a number of countries that are looking at what we're doing. For example, we're not speaking about Ukraine as much as we were a couple of years ago, but that clearly is going to be a generation of veterans and families that are going to need a lot of support. And they're quite interested in what organisations like Soldier On are doing, and there is an opportunity there to share our learnings and equally to learn from them and their operational experiences of recent times in terms of how it is that we can best meet the needs of current veterans and families.
Yeah. From your experience and then your experience as you head this up and talk to so many people, on this Anzac Day weekend, what would you say to the general public who haven't served in the Defence Forces, that you go, hey, this is what you need to be thinking about, or this is what you should know, or this is maybe what someone who has served isn't going to tell you, but this is what they're saying. And it could be on any part of life or area of it. What would I suppose, if you're the spokesman for everybody, what would you be saying to us?
Well, far be it from me to be assumed as the spokesman for the community, but what I would encourage people to do is say two things. The first is to simply say to someone who has served, or their family, thank you for your service, and acknowledge that service. And the second thing is to ask them about that service, because through those types of conversations comes increased understanding and awareness, and importantly, connection. And our veterans and families, when they feel understood and heard and seen and appreciated, ultimately, we're all better for it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure as you're listening, you understand why we wanted to get Paul on this Anzac Day weekend, and why we are wanting to give a big mention out to the work of Soldier On. So that website again is Soldier On, spelled exactly as you'd imagine it, soldieron.org.au, and you can click through there. There is a donate page. You can find out more about it. And certainly, give your support because we need to be so thankful for those who have done that. We need to hear those stories, as we said, and what an incredible way that we can do that. Maybe even this weekend you can give in that sense. soldieron.org.au. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for the work that you are doing as well.
Well, thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to share this story with your listeners.
It's been wonderful having you in. Paul Singer is the CEO of Soldier On, chatting to us here on Towards Understanding.